Well, welcome everyone to our session on It Takes Two to Tango. This is going to be an exciting and engaging session. If you have not had the pleasure of listening to a speech from Lori before, you are in for a treat. I am Carolyn Walker, the facilitator for the meeting. I am a member of the Clemson Toastmasters and currently serve as Area Director 61. Questions that you have virtually will be entered into the chat, and those will be answered at the end of the session. Lori will give you some time at the end to ask questions. At this time, I will introduce her. Lori's experience with conflict resolution began on the kindergarten playground when other children would seek her out as an arbitrator. She began her career as a classroom educator of emotionally challenged students. Conflict resolution was the core of that classroom experience, from students to parents to administration. Since that time, she has been able to utilize these skills as a consultant to families as well as in a leadership capacity for work and volunteer organizations. She is a licensed DISC personality trainer and consultant, which dovetails with her experience as a communication coach and success strategist. An awareness of how different personality types respond under pressure is beneficial to gauging helpful responses. Let's hear from Lori Pruitt, Distinguished Toastmaster. It takes two to tango, effective conflict resolution.
When I answered the phone, all I heard was crying. I saw her name come up on this caller ID, and I expected that she was calling to tell me, yes, I'm ready to sign the contract. I was working in middle management then, and I had pursued her because I saw her potential for leadership. But some of her workmates wanted to see proven leadership rather than potential leadership. They started a discussion on a text thread. It did not include the person I was contracting, except for one night, one of the people on the text thread couldn't find it, so they just started a new one. And because this woman was on their mind, they included her on this group text, where they were speaking very freely because they did not think she was in the silent audience. She was overwhelmed by the fact that they had lost confidence in her, and she quit that day before she even got started. That conflict was resolved. But it took time, and it took patience, and it took effort, and it took two to tango. It took two sides, two parties to come together, to be willing to put it all on the table to get this out in the open. What happens when we experience conflict? We go into survival mode. We want to feel safe. We want to be successful. We want to feel significant. We want to feel valued. And when we don't, things happen. It's fight or flight. Now, some of you, we know exactly how you feel all the time because you are lions. You roar right away. You show us how you feel. We don't have to guess, we know, but it can be scary. And then some of you are lambs. Got to watch out for those lambs because they have feelings. They might be angry or resentful too, but you are not going to know. They are deep water. They're not going to tell you, they're not going to show you, they're just going to disappear. Are you a lion or a lamb? It takes two. We need the combination of the two. When you seek out a best friend, a life partner, usually you're going to end up with someone who's the opposite, a lion and a lamb. And it's the two that work together to work out this conflict. There's some ways that are not helpful to working out conflict. If you just act out, if you lash out, if you're a door slammer or a screamer, it's not going to help the situation. It's like putting gasoline on a heated fire. And sometimes those lambs fool themselves into thinking they're taking the high road just because they're being quiet. Now, there's an advantage in taking a few minutes to calm down before you say or do the wrong thing. But when a moment turns into hours or weeks or days of silent pouting, you've moved into an area that's not helpful for anyone. It doesn't resolve the conflict. There are two effective ways to resolve it. Number one, ignore it. Overlook it. Can you overlook it? Did someone offend you? Did they mean to? Most of the time, we don't even realize we offended someone. Is it something easy that you can just overlook and move on? And when I say overlook, I don't mean remember it and think about it all the time, but just not take any action. I'm saying get over it, move on as if it never happened. But if it is happening over and over and over, and this relationship begins to be characterized by this conflict and this problem, then here's the only solution that you have that is effective: a hard conversation. A hard conversation. And it's hard because we're vulnerable and we don't feel safe when we're doing it. But it's the only way. Every story you've ever heard, if you can think of one that does not have a conflict and a resolution, let me know right now. You think about it. What's your favorite movie? Favorite book? The favorite story that your grandpa tells every year? I bet you it's going to have conflict and some resolution into it. And we want resolution. Our brain wants it. Our soul wants it. And I'll prove it to you. Da, 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 da. You have to do it, right? We want resolution, we want completeness, and we're very uncomfortable without it. And the movies and the books and the stories that disturb us are the ones that don't have that ending. It doesn't even have to be a happy ending, but it just never resolves. Have you watched a movie like that and you thought, I spent 2 hours for that? And it wasn't even close to any kind of resolution. We're wired for it. We're wired for stories and we're wired for resolution. It's all about what Mark Brown just said, relationships. That's why we bother, because we reconcile. It's putting back together. That's what reconcile means. Ray, I'm a teacher, means again. Conciliare is a Latin root that means put together. So to put together again, just like you are 10 years old, okay? Right now, you're 10 years old and you just broke your grandma's favorite coffee mug. And before you tell her, what do you want to do? You find the super glue and you try to get all the pieces and put it back together, and you know it will never look and work exactly the same as it did before. But it's important. Not the coffee mug, your grandma. The relationship with your grandmother is what's important, and that's why you take the time to do it. 5 things. Let's walk through 5 quick steps. Have you ever heard that when you're angry, take 5, count to 5, calm yourself down, number 1. Just calm down. Give it some time and some space. It might be a few minutes, it might be a few days, it might be a few weeks. For some people, depending on just how serious and unpleasant that conflict is or was, it might take years. But we don't give up because relationships are worth it. The second thing we need to do is ask ourselves a question: did I contribute? Before you're out there ready to fix it and solve it, and you can tell everybody how they need to change so you don't have to, stop and ask, did I do anything to provoke this conflict? Even if I didn't mean to. How did I contribute to the conflict? And maybe you didn't at all. Maybe you were just brought into it. I've had that happen recently. I didn't do anything, but all of a sudden, people are frustrated with me because I didn't work it out before it happened. Maybe I've been doing a little bit too much of that. People are counting on me to do something that I've been doing before. The next thing is think about the other people. Where are they coming from? What's valuable to them? So let's talk about DISC personalities. Anybody ever heard of DISC personalities? If you haven't, there's something in your handout. There's a breakout there of the 4 types, and we're just going to hit the waves on this because we could be here 3 days or 3 weeks or the whole year and talk about this. But we're going to hit the high spots. If you do not have the handout, if you don't see it and you didn't see it in the chat, I sent it to everyone's email. So if you check your email, we're saving paper today, so you can access it through your email. The D personality, they want results, but they do not want to appear weak or taken advantage of. They want you to be direct. Don't be all nice, just be direct. Give me the truth right here, right now. At their best, they are visionary and effective leaders. They get the job done, but in the process, they can be very demanding and walk over other people. They get it done, but behind them are a trail of broken relationships. The I personalities are the life of the party. They want to have fun, they want to be liked, and they are very afraid of being rejected. They want to keep it light. They're the ones who will make a joke right in the middle of the conflict. Some people will appreciate it, and some people will not. At their best, they are enthusiastic and inspirational. And at their worst, maybe a little disorganized. Our steady folks, they want harmony. Harmony. They'll do anything to keep the peace. They don't want to be unsettled or for people to be angry at each other. They want to resolve conflict in a way that we all just get along. And at their best, they're steady and loyal. And at their worst, they're slow and resistant to change. The C personalities, they want to do it right. They want accuracy, and they don't want to be wrong. When you work things out with them, they want the facts. Just the facts. No drama, no jokes, no emotion. Give me the facts, but don't attack me. Just tell me what you want and what can I do. At their best, they're systematic and organized and follow through. But at their worst, they're critical, picky, maybe a little bossy. Each one of these people and personalities is valuable, very valuable. But what happens is our best self is the opposite of our worst self. And sometimes when people reject or have a problem with our worst self, we think that they're rejecting our best self. And we're very protective of that because we know that's our purpose. That's where our value lies. if we take that time to stop and think about, how can I speak to this person, not to just get results, not to just be funny, not to just keep peace, not to just do it right, but how can I reach out to that person so that they will hear me, so that we can put it back together? I want you to think for a moment. Everybody think of a conflict in your mind that took some time to resolve. I'll give you just a minute to think about that, because I want you to hold that thought in your head. Think about, what did you do? How did you get from where you were to where you want to be with it? I would guess that it's action, that you took action, you did something. You did something to make the change. You didn't just sit and ignore it and hoped it would get better, because it doesn't happen. It might calm down, but the embers are still hot. And it doesn't take but a little fanning of the flames for all of that conflict to swell up again. But when we take the action, please hear me and hold this thought. Go to the person first, because it takes two. It takes the two. Or if there's a group, there's sometimes two parties. It takes two to come to the table. But go to that person first. Sometimes we're tempted, because we want to be validated and we want to know that we're on the right track, that we go to everyone else first, just like that text message in the beginning. And everybody's discussing this situation, but we haven't discussed it with that person first before we've gathered steam and energy around it. So go to the person first. And finally, follow up. Just because you had a moment where you think everything's good now, come back a little later and just make sure. Because you know there's some of those people who just want peace, and they'll say, yes, everything's fine, when everything isn't really fine now. This whole process is about people and keeping those relationships intact. And our relationships fall into some general categories. Family, and we are exposed to those most often. Work, others like Toastmasters, volunteer organizations, best friends, friend groups, neighbors. And here's one that surprises people sometimes: self. Sometimes we don't even realize what a battle we are in with reconciling with ourselves. And our inner voice says things to us that we wouldn't say to anybody. We might not say to our worst enemy, but we say to ourselves, and it begins with us. For the next part of what we're doing this morning, it's time for you to roll up your sleeves and get to work a little bit. I want to tell you about 4 scenarios. You have it in your handout if you can access that, but if you can't, I'm going to read these to you. Number 1, your spouse, partner, or best friend is always late. You hate being late. It's time to leave for an event, and your spouse, partner, or best friend is in no hurry. You are a planner who is usually on time, and even though you are late, they are likely to be the life of the party while you are sulking. Scenario 2. At work, you're assigned to work on a project together. Your workmate is overwhelmed with projects and assumes that you can pick up the slack. But he or she does not show up at the meetings and does not follow through for any collaboration. But you don't know what's going on. You do the work just to keep the peace, but you are growing resentful. Number 3, you are president of your Toastmasters club. You like results. You have voluntold, we do that, don't we? You have voluntold a member to be VPE because you know that he or she will not say no. However, that VPE did not attend TLI and is now not even coming to the meetings. Scenario 4, you are furious. You are furious with yourself. How could you make the same mistake over and over again? You have overestimated what you could get done, and now you feel like you have failed in front of everyone. Now people will know. Maybe they'll think less of you. Now you just want to quit. What we're going to do is I want you to gather yourself into 4 groups. We're going to discuss what we would do with each one of those scenarios. Okay, now it's our turn to hear from each of you. We'll start with scenario 1. You send one person from your table to the mic that's over there in the center of the room and give us a table topic version of your group's resolution.
We had session 1, which is your partner or friend is always late, but the life of the party and you're sulking. It's not a good fun time. But what we came up with was one of our members said, we have a party on Saturday night. Now, this is what time we have to do, and we have, what time do we need to get ready? And each day, review it. And so when Saturday comes, it's embedded, hopefully, that's what they're going to do, barring any, emergencies. But then you have a plan. The whole thing was making a plan to make it happen. And even like going to church the next morning, we ought to go to bed at 10 tonight because we got to get out. We can get up at 8:30 and make church in time, and that'll work out well. And let's do that. And it's in agreement. There's peace in all of that when you can have an agreement. The other thing is, all you need to do is sometimes you need to remind a person who has said, well, if you can be 10 minutes late, you can be 10 minutes early, but not in that tone. Remember, you told me I could be 10 minutes late or 10 minutes early. I think you just need to remember what you told me. Session 1, thank you.
Session 2, scenario 2.
Hi, I have question number 2, table number 2. The question was, your coworker was supposed to collaborate with you on a project, but they are overwhelmed and they don't come to meetings. They don't help you and collaborate in any way. What would you do? We would talk to that person, let them know that they have an obligation to help, that you are overwhelmed, see what type of commitment they could give you, and let them know that going forward, this was not going to be acceptable behavior, and that if we had to go to the leadership, letting them know that we were both overwhelmed and not able to commit to this project, so that there's no hard feelings going forward. So make sure you talk to your coworker and get their understanding as well. Thank you.
Thank you.
So I'll go down. I'm sorry, I'm going to try to do the camera, but half of the audience is over here as well, so I'm not going to exclude all. So we had the third scenario, which was someone in our Toastmasters group, the president, said, hey, you would be great at this. This is your role. Have fun. And suddenly that person disappeared. didn't come back often. And we're like, what in the world? And I was mentioning to my cohort here, I said, that actually happened in our club. So I know exactly what's happening here. So what we found out was, first, the president was a D, very direct, you will do. And the person who was receiving, we think, was an S, which wanted to please and help the group, but when he got that assignment was overwhelmed and said, it's easier to back off or leave and not be a part of it. So this happened in our club, like I said before, and the issue we found is the club was very, here's your assignment, go, to people who weren't ready for it. So we proposed that we would present the opportunities to them offline, outside of that environment where we were assigning them, and see if they were willing to take on that role, and ask them if they had the opportunity. And if they were willing to do that, then we would go ahead and move forward. And I'll just cut it because I can see the time is cutting short, so.
Good morning, everyone. We are from table 4. We're at the 4th topic, talking about, taking on a lot of tasks and feeling overwhelmed, and in some ways, perhaps not even delegating, or perceived as not being delegating a task. And what we found out is, funny enough, all 3 of us have a good mix of C and D, which we're very in charge, very specific how we do things. And even though that's a great quality to have, often when you get overwhelmed, taking on too many tasks, you're perceived to be rude or abrupt. And one thing you can do is take a moment to just communicate what you're feeling, so people don't feel like you're cutting them out or left out or demanding or saying things in such a way where it's perceived as instructions or being rude, because that's not the case. A good example I was giving my fellow colleagues at table is, I was just, sometimes even you get excited and you get frustrated and it's like, oh, I gotta get this done, but I'm overwhelmed. And if you just take a moment to literally say, okay, this is not about you, it's me being overwhelmed, but I need to get a sword, can you help me? And asking for that help, it allows you to involve others to get it done. Thank you.
Okay, let's hear quickly from our online groups. Group number 1, do you have a spokesman ready?
This is Louise. We weren't sure what group we were in, so we literally just picked one of the scenarios to talk about, which actually happened in real life to a few people in the room. So we did scenario number 3, and it was a corporate club, and the way they started the concept was the group get together. We're missing these important people in their meeting, and they would fill the agenda as it goes along just at the time of the meeting. Then they started to talk about, how do we get this worked out? And what they did was they followed up, they met with the people, called, followed up, they were overwhelmed, and they banded together and decided to reduce the workload by giving them one thing to handle. And when they handled that one thing, it started to make them relax, get more comfortable. It boosts their confidence. And then they followed up later. And every time there was a meeting and they did one thing better, they added another step. And that way they kept the group intact and get people to stay together. They sent text messages after the meeting to make sure people were followed up with and to praise them and check in again and again and again. It seems to be working.
Thank you. Group number 2.
So my name is Bob Huddleston, and we were in there with Marlene Jackson and Wanda Parnell. We made the assumption that on the project resentment victim, if you will, was S, very supportive and not one to complain. And person that was not doing their share was the I, which is the self-absorbed people that they have a hard time controlling their time anyway. The fix, if you will, would be to we considered copying the boss and getting them in trouble, but then we reflected back and said, no, that's not the best. So what we did was we go and encourage that partner to do one small thing and keep them in the loop on all the status reports. And of course, you're going to copy the boss once a month, but every week you keep them in the loop on incremental progress. And then when they really do something, you praise them in front of the boss so that they'll do more, because they love praise. That's it.
Thank you. And I'm watching the clock. Of course, I want to hear from everybody, but I think we're coming up against our timeline, and we want to honor your time and the time of the schedule and routine today. So we thank you all for working on this. Did anybody learn anything today? Do you have a takeaway today? I hope that your one takeaway for today is that projects are important, but people are more important. Relationships can't be sacrificed in the process of trying to get the job done, because that's not going away. People need to stay connected, and when they're not, we have to take that time to stop and to do that. And as we wrap things up, I do want you to have this one takeaway, because we all have these, right? Most everybody, I expect everybody in this room, I know everybody at home is on a device. They're very useful, but they are virtual. And we can know people, and I was so happy to meet Pinky Squad today because I've met her virtually, but so much more energy to meet her in person. It's all different. When we resolve conflict, texting, email, and social media is for connecting, communicating, networking, but it is not for resolving conflict. And you would be surprised, among the Zoomers, the Gen Zs, they break up over texting, have a relationship for a year and break up over texting. So let's resolve conflict face to face. Is it hard? Yes. Is it worth it? Yes. If we can't get face to face, we might have to settle for voice to voice. But let's never attempt to resolve conflict on pencil and paper, on a virtual platform, because 97% of what we're communicating is our voice and our body language. And without that, we risk people reading into that what we intended to say. The world is hurting all over. Pandemic, war, poverty, everything hinges on relationship and communication. And so today I ask you, Toastmasters, to lead by example.